All right, Champ, we're on the Mind Your Business podcast. We're here for episode number 108 here on Friday, September the 30th, 2019. I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to join on today. I hope everybody's had a phenomenal week on this week. A lot of great things going on, a lot of things in the news that I'll get to, some in Ron's rundown later on in today's podcast. Let's see, Miss Liggett, let's go. Thank you so much for joining on. Chris Eagleston, thank you for joining on. Chris is going to be a returning guest here in the next couple weeks, so I'm very excited to have Chris back on, who was actually our first guest, I believe, that we had on the podcast, and so excited to have him join back. John, what's going on here? Everybody joining on Spreaker. I see you jumping in. Give me some love. Give me some thumbs up, some hearts. Do all that. My sister Jennifer, what's going on? Thank you all for joining here on today's recording of episode, again, 108 of the Minding Your Business podcast. Hope everybody has been on your best behavior. Hope that you've got through the week with no obstacles, no disruptions, and you're ready to get poured into with our great guest that I'll be introducing very soon. And so make sure that you share this with your friends there on social media, and invite them to come in and interact with us here as we get ready to record the show. So, hope you got through September 11th. September 11th is always tough to remember, and everybody remembers. If you were around during that time, you remember what all was going on and that sort of thing. So, definitely my thoughts are always with my good friend Anthony, who lost his life in the tower, and he was not recovered. His body was not recovered or not found. And so I was last in New York for the 10-year anniversary, actually, back in 2011. And so I got a chance to pay respects there. So anyway, let's go ahead and get things kicked off, because I want to make sure I introduce our guests with no delay, because you're really going to learn some great nuggets today from this gentleman. So, as always, the Minding Your Business podcast is brought to you by the Binge Podcast Network, the Binge at onabinge.com. You can check out exclusive content from all of our great podcast shows. Our flagship, the Startup Life podcast with Dominic Lawson, Let's Be Real, who celebrate their 50th episode. So definitely shout out to them. Great group of team that's doing great things on Let's Be Real. Nothing But Buckets, Quotally. We've got a great lineup. We've got shows on the way, Skills and Heels. One that you'll hear about very shortly on the next few episodes is Accrued Interest, banking podcast that'll be joining the lineup soon. So onabinge.com. As always, brooksbrothersconsulting.com. Retail banking consulting. Share with your banker, brooksbrothersconsulting.com. If you're looking for private lending opportunities to fund your business, whether it's startup or if you've been in business for a long time, you should check out brooksbrothersconsulting.com to get access to a network of over 4,000 private lenders all around the United States of America. Episode number 108 here, September the 13th, 2019. What do we do?
What we do here is go back.
right, the Minding Your Business podcast, episode number 108, brought to you by the Binge Podcast Network. onabinge.com is where you need to check that out. Great lineup of podcasters. Dominic Lawson of The Startup Life as our flagship podcast. 50th episode celebration for Let's Be Real. Great podcast, and shout out to that team. Of course, the Minding Your Business podcast, Quotally, Nothing But Buckets. Join in on that particular movement at onabinge.com. BrooksBrothersConsulting.com is where you need to check for retail banking consulting as well as private lending access to a network of over 4,000 lenders. Let's go ahead and get started since we got past our technical difficulty here just a second ago. But we're on live and going. Shout out to everybody on Spreaker. Shout out to everybody on Facebook Live. What do we do? All right, I'm your host, Champ Ron. Thank you for joining me here today on episode number 108 of the Minding Your Business podcast. Hope you're able to get through this week with no disruptions, no obstacles. Hope that you were able to remember September 11th on this past Wednesday. And I'm so glad that you took time to be here with me. Shout out to Scott Kenny. What's going on? Jennifer, how you doing? Jennifer Montgomery. What's going on? Everybody that's joining on Spreaker.com is too many to name, but I always appreciate you guys for joining in. Listen, today I want to not delay because I want to introduce our special guest. His name is Ankesh Kumar. He is the founder and CEO of Let's Chat, which is letschat.chat. And we're going to talk today specifically about his background and how he got to where he is today and how sales professionals, which many of you are able to communicate with your prospects and customers, which is very critical in today's competitive landscape. It's very critical that you're able to efficiently and effectively communicate. Because listen, nobody wants to be sold to anymore. And people want to be able to build relationships. And the way that you build relationships is through communication. And so Ankesh has found a way to be able to do that and link all of us together. So I want to introduce Ankesh. Ankesh, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much, Ron.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking time. I know you're busy. You're running a company and have many things going on, man. So I thank you for taking time joining the Minding Your Business podcast. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, good. So, Ankesh, let's jump right in. Talk to me and the audience about your background and how you got into what you're doing today.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you a quick overview. I was actually born in India. I grew up in London. I moved to the States about 25 years ago. I came on a vacation and just ended up staying. And I started a couple of businesses. I did an IT services company, which we grew 5, 15, 25, and we sold it to TMP, the parent company of Monster. And then I did a software company, which we raised about $50 million in venture funding. We sold that to Kronos, and so since then I've been doing some private investment, and we actually also sold some pants to Google on one of my ventures as well. So been in Silicon Valley for 20 plus years, and been in that ecosystem. More recently, I've been working on this product, as you mentioned, around chat. What sort of really struck me is that we've seen over the last decade, products like Instagram and WhatsApp and numerous chat applications, Skype, etc. And so chat has become very pervasive in all of our lives, right? We use it every day, millions of times a day. And during our work environment as well, when we're sort of in a company, products like Slack, which recently went public, are very pervasive. But if you take the scenario when salespeople are communicating with prospects, really phone people don't like to pick the phone up and talk to people as much as they used to, and email is really the only way you can communicate. So it dawned on me there was an issue here. Chat, everyone's comfortable with chat, but they're not comfortable with sharing cell phone numbers with salespeople, because they constantly get texted inappropriately or might get called, then that's a problem that we wanted to solve. So that's really where we were coming from, is trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, and as I look at it, and I'm a big Salesforce.com user. Shout out to Salesforce.com. they need to send me a check, I guess, since I'm shouting them out. But but anyway, I know that you're
They've got
integrated
enough
with
money
it.
to do that, by the way. So
Oh, they got they got rivers full of it going all over the place. You're right. So what is it about chat specifically, Ankesh, that makes it so effective? I know that you mentioned earlier about people don't really like to pick up the phone much anymore. People. To me, it just seems like people have way more branches coming out from their tree than they used to, and they're more educated, but they've got more going on. And so because of that, they don't want to, take the time with the other modes of communication, which sometimes can be slower and in some cases maybe not as effective or certainly not as efficient. So what is it about chat that you see that people, really find efficient and effective for them? Oh, I think I might have lost, did I lose you, Ankesh? I think I lost Ankesh. So we'll get him. I was asking him about, specifically about chat and with his business. And so I want to get Ankesh back. Here he is.
Hello. Ron, you?
Hey, Ankesh, are you back?
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure what happened there.
No, I'm not sure either, but no, not a problem. So yeah, no, not a problem at all. And so
We always have a little fun. I'm used to doing product demos when the system's crashing all over the place. It doesn't take me.
right, definitely. So
So I think just to pick up, I think you were asking me what makes chat really powerful, right?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, every form of communication is useful, even actually physical mail. Sometimes, we in sales have used physical mail to grab someone's attention. If you actually write a card and handwrite it and send it to someone, that's powerful. So depending on the use case, specifically with chat, it's where it's a short form of communication. And so if it's just like a quick back and forth, hey, are you free at 10 o'clock today? No, I'm not. Or I had a question about the RFP. And you don't want to have a long email. So chat is really, it's really an immediacy. We use email very effectively if you want someone to contemplate and think about things and put it down in an email. And then sometimes if it's a little bit complicated, pick the phone. So I think depending on the need for the communication, but the point being, you should have all available at your disposal. Right? You should have the ability to chat. You should have the ability to email and pick the phone up. And chat's not been that obvious. I've talked to a lot of salespeople, and they'd love to chat with their prospects, but it's that whole thing about. There's an article in the New York Times talking about how not sharing cell phone numbers, and so that's been an issue with someone who you've got a short-term relationship with. But I think once in sales, as you build the relationship with your prospect, then they're more comfortable in doing that. But especially in the initial phases, but you're sure you're going to do a deal, then it becomes a little bit sort of tenuous.
Yeah, I think chat obviously can be a bit of a challenge sometimes, maybe from an introductory communication. I think it's great. I definitely see where it fulfills a need. In terms of, like you say, as you're building a relationship with a prospect, and it becomes more of a real-time kind of communication, somewhat how talking on the phone is, except it's a little more real-time, a little more streamlined. It doesn't require like an immediate next second response, but it's a little quicker than say text message or say even like email, which those have more the natural impression that it doesn't require that immediate follow-up communication. You kind of do it sometimes at your leisure, but I think the efficiency of it is fantastic. And you kind of touched on this, so I'll ask you a question, Ankesh. From a security standpoint, we've got some people that are chiming in with questions in terms of the data security around chat, and then of course the big question is about bots. That sometimes people are concerned that they're not actually talking to another person, they're talking to Tom that's actually a computer and not Tom, a human being.
Right.
And so can you kind of speak to those, or are those pushbacks that you get in your business?
Not really. Let me explain why. So firstly, on the privacy issue, the way that we built it was pretty much that in mind, the scenario of the salesperson reaching out to prospects. So the way that it works is that you get a link. So, so say you sign up for it, and by the way, the account's free. So if you sign up, your link will be letschat./Ron or Champ, right? So you have your own personal chat link, and anyone who signs up. So then what you can do, you can share that. You can tweet it, you can email it to your prospects. I use it in my email signature. And so if a prospect wants to chat with me, they just click on the link. And what that does, it sends me a notification on my phone that Ron wants to chat. And then it sets up a private browser session. And so we can just chat in this browser session, and neither of us have each other's phone number. And then when it's finished, it's done. And so it's a very it's a very comfortable way for prospects to have it. They're going to you send them an email saying, hey, I've got a really good service. I've got a brand new whatever. I know you're in the banking business. So there's a new loan come out that you should be aware of. And they say, okay, I have a quick question. What's the term of the loan, etc. And that's where chat's really good, right? A couple of quick questions. And I said, okay, here's my cell phone number. Call me. So that's how it works in terms of the security. With regards to the chatbots, I think there's some really depending how you use it, it's very useful. So let's take the example which I just did that you have a link and someone clicks and they want to chat. Say you're not available. Say you're on an aeroplane or you're whatever, something's going on and you're not available. So the automation, the chatbot function on it saying, hey, Ron's not available currently, but please leave him a message, or here's his calendar and you can schedule some time. So that is chatbot functionality, although it's kind of like, it's very simple. The other one that we're seeing a lot of customers wanting to use, and I think you said this, I can't remember if it was your last podcast or that when you were talking about that was a really good one last week, but it was this one, is that the buyer is in control, right?
Right.
And the buyer wants to know. So sometimes when you reach out to people and you give them a very short email, I run a dry cleaning service or a car wash dealership or whatever that your business is, they're like, I'm passively interested, but tell me a little bit more. So then if you can have your Facebook feed, you can have about us and any YouTube videos you've done, where they can explore your business without having to sort of actually speak to someone to get over the hump and say, yeah, I'm more interested, I want to talk to this guy now. Or girl now. And I think that's where chatbot functionality comes in. It's a self-service for the prospect to learn about your business. They can say, okay, show me the social feed, show me this, show me that. And so they're navigating through it. So they're not, talking so much, they're being navigated, but then they have the option of getting chat or, getting on an appointment. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah,
it definitely makes sense. And so, let me go kind of here then. So Ankesh, as you've built this company, how many people work in your company, and what's their different functions to really make this go?
Yeah, so, I know your audience are a lot of guys that have their lifestyle businesses and some are larger companies and stuff. I've done both. I've had a lifestyle company and I've had a kind of like a company I've raised 15 million for, I mentioned, but I kind of like started this particular venture on the lifestyle. And the reason being is in Silicon Valley, sometimes it gets a little bit sort of like, it almost becomes an ego trip on how much money you raise, and people get, and I've been there as well, is you raise money and you sort of like just spend it, because that's why you got money, right? And then you end up spending it always not so wisely. So with this venture, I've been really, there's only 3 or 4 of us, to answer your question, and we kept the burn rate really, really low. But what that allows us to do is to get the product to market fit. So you sort of like take the product to the market, what are the feedback, and you hear 3 or 4 different points. You're like, okay, let's maneuver it, and you have the runway to do that. So there's me, and then I got my one developer, Vivek, and then I got 2 guys who actually, I know tips and tricks about startups, and these guys are basically working commission only, and you get them bought into the vision. So there's really 4 of us, and I say 3 or 4 because they're both sort of part-time and commission-only base.
Yeah, and so, you mentioned about building, your other businesses and how you built this as more of a lifestyle business. And so, where do you see it going? Where do you see the chat functionality going, just in terms of how it supports the sales industry?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite sayings in business is think strategic but act tactically. So when I'm talking about low burn rate, 3-4 lifestyle, it's kind of like that sort of thing. But I do have a strategic vision that, where we could get to is the WhatsApp of business communication. And so I think that if we do start seeing some good traction, and I'm not unopposed to, scaling the business and changing it from a lifestyle to, to a proper company and building a management team and going international and everything else. But I think, it's usually that's 1 in 100 companies do that, so you have to allow for not being able to do it. And but I think it's depending on the traction we get, is that we'll see where we can actually go with this. So, but I do think there's a need. I mean, I think globally there's 30 million salespeople. I think in the US is around 15,
Yeah.
and they're all dealing with prospects. So if they've got an ability to chat, that gives you a sense that it's a pretty large market opportunity. But we have to prove it out first before we sort of
Yeah, absolutely. And my guest today, Ankesh Kumar, founder and CEO of Let's Chat. You can connect with him and his team as well as be able to use the service at letschat.chat, and that's in the show notes as well for you to be able to connect. Ankesh, as an international business person, let me ask you and kind of compare, if you would, compare and contrast salespeople here in the United States and then, abroad. So from an international standpoint, how do they maybe compare and contrast in terms of how salespeople, it may be in the past or currently interact, with customers and prospects, and how have you seen that evolve, over time?
Right. I think that in Europe, where I grew up in England, you have to be a little bit more sort of passive. You can't be as aggressive. I mean, like, for example, what we do here in the US often is if you look at LinkedIn and, you see if someone went to a particular school, right, and you sort of mention that and say, I hear you went to Stanford and the Cardinals had a great, win last week, although they didn't. They lost the USC, but, you bring that, maybe I should do the other way around. I see you went to USC and they beat up on the Cardinals. That would be sort of like something you do. You'd never do that in England. You never sort of, that's like, oh, that's very personal. Why would you be mentioning that? So I think it's a little bit more open and friendly, and you can be a little bit more casual about it. In other parts of the world, I've been talking to people in the Middle East and also in places like India and China. Chat is actually very pervasive. WeChat and so their prospects are more open to giving you their chat functionality, and WhatsApp and WeChat. WhatsApp in India and WeChat is very, very common. And that's, I guess, would also give me some sort of idea that maybe we can apply that to the US as well. And but here, people feel more comfortable. I think maybe it's because it's just a bombardment of information that people are getting every day. They're getting hit on from many sides, especially if you're a buyer. So I think that one of the things that we also thought, the three main buyers in a corporation, probably IT, HR, and finance. And if you're in that kind of function, you could actually, the salesperson hits you up and says, hey, look, give me your cell phone number. Well, no, here's my chat link. Ping me on Let's Chat when if you've got something you want to ask me. So I think that's sort of, what I've seen internationally and how we could translate that to the US.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of people who may not do international business may not be aware of some of the different mindset approaches and that sort of thing. And so, what's next for you specifically? So, we talked some about your company. Are you looking to, start up more companies? Are you looking to kind of really hone in on Let's Chat? Share with us what's kind of next for you.
Yeah, well, me, I think there's a big opportunity here, so I'm just focused on this right now.
Yeah.
I do a little charity work. I do work with underprivileged kids locally, so I do do some volunteer work there. So that's always very fulfilling. I've got two daughters. One's in NYU, and the other one's going to college UC Davis. So I'm getting to be an empty nester. So I've got more time on my hands.
So you're becoming you said you're becoming an empty nester, Ankesh?
Yeah, exactly. So I've got a little time on my hands, but not much. I do also like to help entrepreneurs and other startup people if they've got questions. I always get satisfaction with that. But in terms of my full-time thing, it's definitely focused 100% on this. I think that, we're sort of at the phase now, just, building it out. I think we've got the product to market fit right, getting our first few early adopters. So, any of your audience have tried out, and just email me directly. I mean, I'll be your first line of support if there's any issues, bugs, suggestions, and stuff. That would be great. So this is really my full-time focus, for the foreseeable future.
Yep, gotcha. Okay, and so I appreciate you sharing, what you've been sharing with us and ways, for salespeople to connect. And so, Ankesh, what do you see as, 2 or 3 best practices for those that are, listening to this podcast, whether you're live or you're listening to the recorded podcast? There are many people that are new in their business. They're maybe they've been in their business for some time. They've hit some roadblocks. They may have different struggles and obstacles that they faced, or they may be having great success to whatever level that they define that. So, what are 2 or 3 best practices just in general that have worked for you, Ankesh, that you can share with the MYB community? Ankesh, you still there, or did I lose you again?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. So I was saying there's 2 things that I would recommend. One is, look after yourself. So do what makes you happy, whether it's playing golf, go to the gym, and you have to find time for yourself. If you don't find time for yourself, then you're going to burn out. Understand that a startup business is a marathon; it's not a sprint. So don't be working 20-hour days, for 7 days a week. Just force yourself to do something. I used to put on my calendar, gym time, and 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, so no one could put any appointments there. So that would be really kind of like one of the things. And expect things to go wrong, because things will go wrong. And if you expect things to go wrong, then you're not going to be surprised. You take the approach, okay, now shit's hit the fan. What are we going to do? How are we going to deal with it?
Right.
And the last thing I'd say is build a team around you. As I told you, I have like 3 or 4 people, and I'm pretty much working in coffee shops and from my home. So it kind of gets lonely, but I've got a network of people, friends, associates that I can go and grab a coffee with, say, hey, this happened, what do you think? Not take up all their time and make it all about me, but there's people that will always be there to give you some advice and help. So build a network, look after yourself, and expect things to go wrong and plan to deal with it.
Yeah, well, I think what you speak to a lot is expectation, right? Is having the proper expectations when you go in. And if your expectations are, not necessarily too low or too high, but if your expectations are that you go in with the idea that everything that you set out to do or what you'd like to do is not always going to be perfect, it's not always going to go the way that you draw it up. So if you have that expectation, I think a lot of people get into trouble, Ankesh, is when they have these high expectations because they want things to work exactly how they draw it up, exactly as they see it in their head, and they want everybody that's around them to operate in the way that they see fit in their mind. And when that doesn't happen,
right,
that can get people really bent out of shape, and that can cause people a lot of grief and a lot of angst. Whereas if you already anticipate that that's not going to be the case, then you can kind of put your big boy and big girl pants on and deal with it and then learn from it. And so I think that's great, great advice for anybody that's listening.
And one other thing I'd add as well, one thing I learned over the 20 years of doing startups is what I call the roller coaster, right? So you have a really good meeting, you go into a customer and they're like, man, this is awesome, just finish the contract, and you're like on cloud 9, so you're at the top of the roller coaster. And then you go back to the office, an hour later and the system crashes and you're like at the bottom of the roller coaster. So I think, you have to find that happy medium. So, don't get too high when things are going well, and don't get too down when things are not going well. Just try to sort of take a deep breath at both times and just put it in perspective, right? We got the deal, but now we've got a shitload of work to do, right? And so put it in perspective. And, we've been here before, we'll do it. And it was really hard for me in the beginning to manage that roller coaster because I'm a fairly emotional person, but that's something that, just always sort of, to think about.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that's great advice, man, just to come back and just to sum it up and just say, hey, listen, things happen, and you're just going to have to, there's an intestinal fortitude that you have to have when you're in business that can sometimes be different than other avenues. And so, you just have to be prepared, and like you say, surround yourself with the right people. Also goes a long way, and sometimes that's a challenge for many people starting out in business as well. But you're going to have to take the time to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people and the right-minded people. And then what it sounds like in your company is putting people, the right people in the right role, and that goes so far, as well. So, and Keish, listen, thank you so much again, man, for jumping in.
One last thing, one last thing I want to add is also one more thing to do is listen to podcasts like Ron and get some good start advice from people like Ron. So that's I'll throw that in at the end.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you throwing in that plug, Keish, at the end. Definitely, myself and there's many others, men and women who provide great insight from their experiences. That can definitely help. So I appreciate that plug, my man, and thank you so much for being on the podcast. I look forward to remaining connected with you. If I can be a resource, let me know. And I encourage everybody to go to letschat.chat to connect with Let's Chat. And you said basically it's a free service, Ankesh?
Correct, it's a free service.
Okay, so it's a free service to be able to chat with your prospects and with your customers, and take advantage of it. And I love for people, if you do take advantage of it, share it with me, Ron at themybpodcast.com, and then I can share that with Ankesh. So hopefully those of you in the MYB community that begin utilizing the service, you can share your feedback. And again, I'd like to be able to pass that on to see how it's a resource for you. So, and Keish, again, thank you so much, my friend. Best wishes to you personally and professionally, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. I'll see you, Ankesh. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was Ankesh Kumar, founder and CEO of Let's Chat with letschat.chat. That's the website. So it's in the show notes for you to check out. So, some interesting conversation that we had with Ankesh in terms of how we got started, man, and the interaction between salespeople. And listen, some of you may not like sales and that sort of thing, but here's the deal: you're always going to be selling something. There's always something that you're creating a proposition for, or that you're positioning. Particularly when you're in business, but even personally too. And so understanding, the different forms of communication with that, to me, I think is really critical. So let's jump into Ron's rundown. So in Ron's rundown, I got a few things that I want to touch on before we close out the show. The first thing this week is California versus the NCAA. So, oh boy, I'm thinking about doing an actual episode just on this, just because it's such a big impact, and as someone that was once a collegiate athlete, it hits really close to home. So, this week, matter of fact, on Wednesday, the NCAA says legislation as far as in California that's aimed to basically give college athletes a chance to earn money while in school, which is something that's been debated for decades, right? It is, I guess, passing through the various branches of government in California. And so, matter of fact, the state Senate voted it, I think it was unopposed. I think 39-0 there in California, approving the bill. But no, matter of fact, I think the Senate actually did a 73-0 vote for that in California. So I may even stand corrected on my numbers, but the legislation won't go into effect until 2023, but that's coming along quick. And so you can imagine that if California is adopting that, so will other states. And so the NCAA naturally is fighting back against that. So that was in the news this week, and you had a lot of people on each side of the aisle on that give their commentary on it. So for those of you that have young people, the day's going to come, it looks to be very soon, where your young athlete will be compensated to various levels. I guess that's going to be the next ball that drops is going to be who's paid what. Is the starting quarterback at Ohio State going to get paid the same as the lacrosse player at whatever state university? Those are the things that have to get sorted out, and they will. But and there'll be controversy around it too. But it's something to start planning for. If you're talking 2023, and if you've got young children that are going to be in the high school, the college age around that time, and then going forward, it's something to definitely keep in mind. But best believe it's not going to end just in California. Other states are going to adopt it as well. I talked this week about there's an ongoing notion that in retail, so in the retail industry, that there's a retail apocalypse that's going on. And really, when people are using that term, they're saying that retail, because all the retail stores that are closing, and I think there's thousands of them around the country that are closing their brick and mortar locations. And people are blaming that on, of course, online sales, particularly with Amazon and the like. Let me give you my thought on the retail apocalypse. It's non-existent. It's BS. Okay, there's no retail apocalypse. People are spending money, and they spend money on what they want, and people are still buying products and services. That's not going to change. What does change is evolution, which is tied to change. So what's happening with retail is a stark evolution. And it's an evolution of mindset. It's an evolution of leadership. It's an evolution, certainly, of consumer taste, of consumer wants and needs. And a big portion of that is how consumers buy products and services, how they're delivered to them, and how they make buying decisions. And so retailers traditionally, like a lot of industries, you see this in banking, a lot of industries where there's a disconnect between leadership at the top and then the people that are on the ground level, that are the retail employees, who tend to be more innovative, they tend to be younger, they tend to be more vibrant because they're people, people in terms of being in front of the people. And so the evolution of it all has moved faster than what you tend to find in general at the leadership level. A lot of these retailers are led by old school, stark, gruff, stubborn people who were groomed a certain way into the industry, and it's harder for them to pivot in general. Now, some companies do it very well, but many companies, it's hard to get people to pivot their mindset because they think of it as, well, this is the way we've always done it. And what I'll share with any company, I'll share with you in your business, is that mindset of this is the way we've always done it is putting people in graveyards in terms of business. So if you want to go to the graveyard quick, you adopt a mindset that says this is the way we've always done it. The way you've always done it is how you did it yesterday. That's it. That's it. How you're going to do it today and how you do it tomorrow may be different. And the world's changing faster, and consumer expectations are changing faster than they ever have in the past. Ever. Right? Ever. It used to be, the world changed every 15, 20 years. Now, the world is changing every 3 to 5 years, if that. Maybe even faster than that, because, as new technology comes in, technology gets more streamlined, it gets less expensive to implement, it becomes more widespread and commonly used. And Amazon was just the beginning, but it's more than just e-commerce and online sales. Retailers haven't done a great job of updating the store experience. And I've said this to many people on several occasions. I've had this where I've spoken in front of bankers and other people in retail. is you've got to create experiences. That's what people are looking for now. This new generation of people is not just put it on the shelf as cheap as you can and let me just go to the store and buy it. Everything now is about convenience. It's about how I can put, as a consumer, as little effort into the buying process as possible because I'm much more informed as to what's going on. In the past, I didn't know as a consumer what was going on behind the curtain, right? Or what's going on behind door number 2. Now I do, for the most part. I have much more insight. Everything's a Google search away. So because of that, and it ties into what we were talking with Ankesh, as a retailer, you have to be cognizant of the evolution of the customer experience and the customer's desires and the customer's expectations. And if you're not, you're going to be you pass by, really quick. And so I encourage you, even in your business, that you don't get caught up into this is how we've always done it, because you can't be an innovator and then make that type of comment. And so now retailers that are pretenders, retailers that are not willing or not able to evolve with the times are just going to get left behind. We saw that here in Memphis with Fred's this week, where Fred's announced bankruptcy, which is the big convenience store pharmacy. And there's many reasons for that I won't get into right now, but that's essentially what happened. They didn't evolve fast enough with the times, and you've got it. So these large companies where they're not nimble enough to move, and it's not that they can't be nimble enough to move, is that their leadership's not willing to. The leadership is not willing to have a holistic view of the marketplace, and so it costs them. But no, there's no retail apocalypse, MYB. There's only evolution. And so the pretenders are getting cleaned out. The old Stark dinosaurs are getting cleaned out, and now you have a new thing, a new day that's coming, and these new retailers are focusing in on the customer experience. And to me, it just makes sense. Like GameStop today, came out, and now they're closing stores. If you're GameStop and you've got these video games, why would I not be, one, streaming as many of them as I can, and why would I not focus on two things? One, the product sales of older game systems, which still have more niche markets now, particularly internationally. So that's one area. Two, why would I not look at fewer stores but make them larger to where they're places where you can come and actually play the games? So somewhat of a quasi-arcade, and you can add price points or monthly subscriptions to that. But I think there's a lot of people that will come to a place to interact, even though you can play against people online, at many of these games. I think I would tie into the same notion that consumers have with things like fantasy football, where, people like to be able to interact, they like to be able to compete, and many of these games offer that. And so I would have not only gameplay, but also demonstrations, demonstrations of how to play, of how to do certain things and certain moves and things like that. You got to have that, as you're creating these new experiences. It's the same thing I've said with Macy's and everybody else. You can't just have racks of clothes anymore and just sit a price and just people around there folding clothes all day. That's the old way. To me, if I'm Macy's, and if y'all share this with them and I see them doing it, I'm going to be making a phone call with this idea. But that's okay. Whatever. They can do whatever they want with ideas. If it's meant for me, it's for me. And if it's not, it's not. But what I would recommend to a place like Macy's is start working with local designers. Start working with, if you see hot designers in the local market, tie them into your store. Tie them into your store. Have them, have the stores be, when you're buying, let it be more of a distribution hub. So convert more of it to warehouse, and then have the rest of the space as experiences. Have fashion shows. If I'm Macy's, I'd have fashion shows for kids. I'd have them for women. I have them for working professionals, for men, young men. I would have fashion shows. I would have, people dressed the part. I talked about even the Disney store. Disney store should have people in character all the time, demonstrating, talking about the behind the scenes of a movie. What does it take to make The Lion King? Who's doing the graphic art and all that type of thing? Have that person come in and do a demonstration of how they draw a Disney character, or how the CGI works. So I would have this education experience piece with people in character. You can't just stick stuffed animals, stuffed Mickey Mouse on the wall anymore. It's not 1983. You can't just stick Mickey Mouse poster in the window and get people to stop by. You got to have Mickey Mouse there, and then let Mickey Mouse talk about being Mickey Mouse. That's what brings people out. And then if they want to buy a Mickey Mouse, guess what they can do? Right there from their app. They can order it while they sitting there talking to Mickey Mouse. And mom and daddy can order as many Mickey Mouses, or Mickey Mice, I guess. Say it with correct English. Mickey Mices, whatever. You can order as many of them as you want. They come right to your door next day, 2 days later, 3 days later, whatever. But that's how you evolve retail. Last thing before I close out the show. So 23 years ago today, the country found out that rapper, poet, actor Tupac Shakur gave in to his injuries from having been shot out in Las Vegas. This is back in 1996, so 23 years ago. All right. Many are reflecting now today on social media about where they were and when they heard the news of Tupac Shakur dying. The conspiracy theory started, right after. People thought, he's not dead. He's hiding out in Cuba somewhere. He's underground somewhere in Mexico or whatever. I'll tell you that Tupac Shakur died September 13th, 1996. Okay? He died. All right? Now, where he went, who knows? Right? But he died. I was 15 years old when Tupac Shakur died. I was a sophomore in high school. All right? So I had seen his whole come up and all that. I was young, but I had been to the movies and all that type of thing. So one of the things about it is I heard it on the radio here in Memphis. I heard it on the local station, and I was blown away, man. I couldn't believe it. I was expecting to come out with "Hit 'Em Up" too. That's what I thought. I thought Tupac was going, I thought he was going to lay low for maybe about a month coming out of the hospital. Then I thought it's going to be on, and he's going to be, if you thought he was live on All Eyes on Me. And keep in mind, Machiavelli had not come out. He had the single, I think, Hail Mary and that sort of thing was out, but the album had not been released yet. So, we were still listening to All Eyes on Me. And if you thought, at that time, see, it's hard now because, when things are 23 years later, people are, you know what I mean? They tend to forget what it was at that time. All Eyes on Me was hard as, I don't know what. And it was different. Double CD. And it was bumping. We were on it. But, I was expecting him to come back with "Hit 'Em Up" too. I didn't think he would die. Tupac was always getting shot, or shot at. But when he died, it threw me off. You know what I mean? I think it threw a lot of people off, but it opened up the door that, man, people don't need to die for this. You know what I mean? It's one thing to have beef with people and things like that. And I think he fed into the beef too much, and the people around him fed into it so much. And then a certain element gets involved that is not of the rap element. You know what I mean? They're not like, it ain't just words for them on wax. It's a real life thing. And it's life or death with certain people. So when those people get involved in something where you might be trying to capitalize it on one end for your fame and fortune and to develop money and things like that and relevancy, but then you start involving people that don't think that way. They don't think that's strategic. You know what I mean? They think they live what you rapping about. And so when you get that intertangled, I think Tupac did that at such a level that ultimately that's what contributed, I think, largely to what became his ultimate demise. And then the same thing with Notorious B.I.G. with Biggie Smalls. I think all that got tied in and looped together. And I think that the whole industry has learned since that you have to be very careful about the element that you get mixed into when you're trying to conduct business on another side. So I share that with you to say, be careful about just relating it to your business as a best practice. Be careful about, you heard Ankesh talk about having the right people around you. And so it's the same for you in your business today. And it relates back to the Tupac situation is you got to make sure you got the right people and the right roles around you. Because it goes so far in how you build your business, or even in the workplace. When you're in the workplace and you're trying to achieve, you're trying to groom up in an organization, you've got to surround yourself with the right people. And if you're around negative people or naysayers or brown nosers or backbiters and things like that, you can't be associated with that. So you got to separate yourself from that, which is not always the easiest thing, but you have to do that. And in some ways, if Tupac had been able to recognize that and been in position to do that, there's a good chance he'd still be here today. But yeah, 23 years ago, Tupac Shakur passed away. It rocked the world, including the rap industry, and it changed things pretty drastically on the pathway to where we are today. But there won't be quite another like Tupac. And it's one thing to watch him on YouTube and see things like that. There's another thing if you were of the age where you got a chance to see him kind of move and that sort of thing. And could you imagine social media with they had this week the Dennis Rodman deal on ESPN 30 for 30, which was really good. Could you imagine people like Dennis Rodman and Tupac Shakur having social media? I mean, as crazy as social media is now and as crazy as they used to say things, could you imagine those two brothers having access to Instagram? Boy, it would have been something else for sure. Yeah, definitely for sure. So anyway, listen, gotta run. Thank you so much for episode number 108 of the Minding Your Business podcast. Listen, y'all like it, share it. If you're on social media, share this. Tag people if you need to. And definitely leave us a great review on Apple Podcast. We've got many more great interviews and content to share as we keep down this pathway of growing this particular podcast. Check me out, themybpodcast.com. You can email me, ron@themybpodcast.com. Listen, thank you so much. Enjoy a great weekend. There are many things going on across the weekend. Weather's going to be great. And you be great for you and your family as well. What do we do?
What we do here is go back.